There is a reason some people walk alone. Not because they are rejected, not because they lack social skill, but because they see what others refuse to see. They notice how easily people lie to belong. How often friendships are built on convenience, not character. How quickly loyalty collapses under pressure. Most people fear being alone more than they fear losing themselves. A Stoic does not. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes shaped by its habits and its company. Seneca warned that crowds rarely strengthen virtue. Stoicism was never meant to make you popular. It was meant to make you unshakable. If you've ever felt drained by people, disturbed by shallow bonds, or stronger in solitude than in company, this message is for you. Stay until the end. What you hear may be uncomfortable, but it will be honest. 1. They choose self-respect over belonging. Most friendships demand a silent sacrifice. You must agree more than you think, laugh more than you feel, stay longer than you want. People who end up without friends often reached a moment where this sacrifice became unacceptable. They realized that belonging had a price, and the price was self-respect. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself never to act against reason simply to please others. People who live by this rule quickly become incompatible with most social environments. They refuse to perform emotions they do not feel. They do not fake interest. They do not dilute their thoughts for comfort. This makes them difficult to place. They are not hostile, but they are not pliable. They listen more than they speak. They observe patterns. They notice how people change when something is required of them. Over time, they withdraw, not in anger, but in clarity. Seneca warned that proximity to the crowd quietly reshapes character. People without friends often felt this happening inside themselves. They noticed irritation after conversations, restlessness after gatherings, a sense of inner compromise. Instead of blaming others, they chose distance. Distance is not rejection, it is discipline. They stopped attending what felt empty. They stopped explaining their boundaries. They stopped negotiating their values for inclusion. Silence replaced noise. Solitude replaced performance. And something returned that most people never protect: dignity. 2. They see people clearly, and that changes everything. Seeing clearly is isolating. People who lack friends often possess an uncomfortable level of perception. They notice inconsistencies. They sense emotional manipulation. They recognize when kindness is strategic and when loyalty is conditional. This awareness is not cynical, it is earned. They have watched people disappear when support was no longer convenient. They have seen honesty punished and conformity rewarded. Once these patterns become visible, pretending becomes impossible. Most social bonds depend on unspoken agreements. Don't challenge too much, don't look too closely, don't disrupt comfort. A perceptive person breaks these rules simply by existing. They ask fewer questions, but deeper ones. They speak less, but with precision. They are present, but not absorbed. Marcus Aurelius wrote that people act according to what seems good to them, even when it is flawed. Understanding this removes resentment, but it also removes illusion. As perception sharpens, tolerance for superficial interaction weakens. They no longer bond over gossip. They no longer vent endlessly. They no longer seek reassurance from crowds. This makes them appear distant. In truth, they are selective. They would rather be alone than surrounded by people who require blindness to remain comfortable. And once clarity arrives, there is no returning to social innocence. 3. They refuse fake connections, even when IT costs them everything. Most people would rather be falsely included than honestly alone. People without friends made a different choice. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. They noticed how many relationships survive only on routine, how friendship often means access without responsibility, how loyalty disappears the moment it becomes inconvenient. Once this is seen, participation becomes impossible. Seneca warned that true friendship reveals itself in adversity, not in comfort. People who walk alone often tested their bonds without intending to. They stopped initiating, they stopped overgiving, they stopped being emotionally available on demand. What remained was silence. That silence answered everything. Instead of chasing explanations, they accepted reality. Fake connections collapse when effort is no longer one-sided. They understood that if presence must be forced, it was never real. This refusal is costly. Fake bonds provide noise, distraction, and the illusion of belonging. Walking away from them means long periods of quiet, weekends without plans, achievements without applause. But this quiet does something powerful. It restores self-trust. They no longer doubt their instincts. They stop confusing attention with affection. They stop mistaking familiarity for loyalty. They learn that loneliness is temporary, but self-betrayal compounds. Choosing real connection means accepting long stretches of none at all. Only those with inner strength can tolerate that. 4. They think independently. and that makes them unsuitable for most groups. Independent thinkers disrupt comfort. They do not adopt opinions just to fit in. They do not repeat narratives they have not examined. They do not join outrage simply because it is popular. This alone separates them from most social circles. Groups survive on agreement, on shared assumptions, on emotional alignment. An independent mind introduces friction, not through argument, but through calm questioning. They ask, is this true? They ask, does this make sense? They ask, what is being ignored? These questions make people uneasy. Marcus Aurelius trained himself to stand apart mentally even when surrounded by others. People who think independently often feel alone in rooms full of people because they are not emotionally synchronized with the group. They listen carefully. They notice contradictions. They observe how quickly opinions change when social approval is at risk. Over time, invitations fade, conversations shorten. The distance grows. This is not punishment, it is incompatibility. Independent thinkers do not need constant agreement to feel secure. They would rather be correct than included, truthful rather than liked. This doesn't make them cold. It makes them ungovernable. And ungovernable people are rarely welcomed. They accept this without resentment. Freedom of thought is worth the price of solitude. 5. They have been betrayed, and they learn from it. This trait is not chosen, it is forged. People without friends are often those who once gave too much to the wrong people. They were loyal before loyalty was earned. They listened before being understood. They stayed when leaving would have been safer. Eventually, reality corrected them. Seneca warned that misplaced trust quietly destroys the giver. Many learned this not through philosophy, but through experience. They watched support fade when they needed it most. They saw how quickly their absence went unnoticed. They discovered that kindness, when unlimited, invites exploitation. Here is what changed. They stopped over-explaining. They stopped rescuing. They stopped being available at their own expense. This withdrawal was not revenge, it was education. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to become bitter, but to remain vigilant. These individuals did exactly that. They refined their standards without hardening their hearts. They learned that access must be earned, not assumed. After betrayal, some people grow louder and more defensive. Others grow quieter and wiser. People without friends often chose the second path. They didn't close themselves off completely, they simply stopped giving before being asked. They replaced blind loyalty with discernment. This is why their circle shrank, not because they became unkind, but because they became precise. 6. They are at home in silence. Silence exposes what noise hides. Most people fear it because it removes distraction, it forces reflection, it reveals inner unrest. People without friends learn to sit in silence without fleeing from it. They do not rush to fill gaps in conversation. They do not panic when days pass without messages. They do not equate quiet with emptiness. To them, silence is a tool. It allows thoughts to settle, emotions to be examined, decisions to be made without influence. Marcus Aurelius used solitude not as escape, but as training. In silence, the mind sharpens. People who are comfortable with silence often find social environments overwhelming. The constant talking, reacting, and emotional exchange feels excessive. Not because they dislike people, but because they value depth. They enjoy long walks without headphones, mornings without noise, evenings without updates. This ability makes them emotionally independent, and emotional independence makes many relationships unnecessary. Silence teaches patience. It builds resilience. It reveals what truly matters. Those who master it do not crave constant connection. They choose it carefully. This is why they appear alone, but they are not lacking. They are grounded. 7. They guard their energy like a finite resource. People without friends understand something most never learn. Energy does not replenish automatically. Every conversation costs attention. Every relationship demands emotional labor. Every interaction leaves a residue, either strengthening or draining. Those who walk alone learn to measure this carefully. They notice patterns. Certain people left them scattered, irritated, unfocused. Others required constant reassurance, validation, or availability. Instead of labeling this as normal, they questioned it. Seneca wrote that life is long enough if it is not wasted. People without friends apply this principle not just to time, but to energy. They stop donating themselves to situations that return nothing but fatigue. This doesn't make them selfish. It makes them intentional. They respond slowly. They speak only when necessary. They do not rush to fix others' problems. They understand that being constantly accessible is not kindness, it is self-neglect. As a result, they become difficult to reach. Invitations decrease, expectations fade. What remains is quiet space to think, grow, and strengthen the inner life. Most people mistake this for withdrawal. It is not. It is conservation. They save their energy for learning, purpose, and the rare connection that does not require self-erasure. This discipline naturally reduces the number of people in their life, and they accept that trade willingly. 8. They live by principle, not popularity. Popularity requires compromise. Principle requires courage. People without friends chose courage. They do not bend their values to avoid conflict. They do not stay silent to protect comfort. They do not adopt beliefs simply because they are socially rewarded. This makes them unpredictable, and unpredictability unsettles groups. Marcus Aurelius governed an empire yet remained internally separate from it. He understood that public approval is unstable and easily withdrawn. People who live by principle accept this early. They speak carefully. They act deliberately. They refuse to play moral games for social gain. This often leads to exclusion, not because they attack others, but because they cannot be controlled. Living by principle means being misunderstood. It means losing access to rooms where integrity is optional. It means choosing solitude over compromise. But it also means sleeping without regret. These individuals are not chasing admiration. They are building alignment between thought and action. That alignment becomes a quiet form of power. Few people are willing to pay the price of principle. Fewer still are willing to stand alone because of it. Those who do rarely have many friends, but they have something rarer. They have themselves. If this message felt uncomfortably accurate, it's because it spoke to something you already knew. You are not antisocial. You are not broken. You are not meant for shallow bonds. You are building an inner fortress, slowly, deliberately, without applause. If you value depth, clarity, and strength in a distracted world, subscribe to this channel, The Inner Fortress. Like this video. Share it with someone who walks alone but stands firm. Silence is not weakness. Solitude is not failure. And peace is worth the price. The Inner Fortress.